Gentlemen, what is going on today? I am Ryan Mickler. I'm the host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here today. Today, I want to talk with you about minding your tongue, the words we use, what we say, what it conveys, what it communicates, and also words and thoughts and ideas that we don't even vocalize. It's the words and thoughts that are in our heads that we're operating our life by. And it's crucial that we understand how powerful words, both vocalized and internalized words, can be, and how important it is to be very deliberate and intentional about the words we're using for ourselves. And of course, as we're trying to lead others as men. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's all about giving you tools, conversations, resources that you need as a man to thrive. And I can't think of a more powerful tool for influence, for authority, credibility, building trust than the words that we convey and the words that we operate our lives by. So I'm going to share with you why this is so important. And then I'm going to give you 4 or 5 tips that you can use to change the words that you use and make them more powerful and effective. Now, look, as I say every week, I'm not an expert. These are things that I'm working on myself. And the reason I wanted to talk with you about this today is because minding my tongue and being aware of the power my words have, not only on others, but on myself, and being more deliberate and intentional with what I use is something that I am personally working on. So we're in this battle together. All right. It's not you and it's not me telling you how to be the perfect man. It's me trying to figure out my own path and then working together collectively as men to improve ourselves. So let's talk about what we vocalize. We live in this culture that just says whatever comes to mind, and you hear things like the 0 F's mentality, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. And we're so flippant with our word choice. I mean, there's so many people that you might listen to on YouTube or Instagram or podcast who cannot go 3 to 5 words without dropping an F-bomb or some vulgar language to attempt to communicate their point. And I think, number one, it's negative. And anytime that we invite negativity into our lives, I think that's going to begin to manifest itself because we start to operate based on that language. So I've chosen, because I don't want that negativity in my life, to attempt to use better words. Plus, I also think it makes us look less intelligent. If we're dropping swear words and that's the range of our vocabulary, it makes us look less intelligent because we don't have a large vocabulary to draw from. There's better word choices than some of the words that I know I've used in the past and that others use. Also, it shows a level of disrespect for using that kind of language to somebody who maybe doesn't want to hear that language. Now, look, this is where the whole I don't care what anybody else thinks mentality comes in. That's not true, right? You got a bunch of tough guys on the internet telling you they don't care about what other people think. And to a degree, there's some truth in that. There's some reasons why that might be a mentality that we adopt to a degree. But there are people that I care about, and I do care about what they think of me because I'm trying to serve them and I'm trying to lead them. I care, for example, what my wife thinks about me. I care, for example, what my children think about me. I care what you guys think because I am trying to be influential in people's lives. And if I'm using language that doesn't resonate with my audience, whether it's my wife or my children or my friends or even you, then I'm not showing any respect to the relationship that we have in whatever capacity that looks like. So I am attempting, again, I'm not perfect at this. I am attempting to let go of negative language, to let go of the swearing, and use different language that's going to convey and communicate my message in a more powerful, constructive, and influential way, because that's ultimately what I want. I do want to influence my wife and children. I do want to influence my friends. I do want to influence you. I know there's a negative connotation with that at times, but there's nothing wrong with influence, especially if you're influencing people to make good decisions that will move them in a better direction. So it is very crucial. Now, outside of what we vocalize and the way we communicate that to others, there's language that we use with ourselves. And oftentimes this is so subconscious that we don't even know we're doing it. What do you think about yourself and who you are as a man? Do you call yourself a loser? Do you call yourself a failure? What is it that your internal dialogue with yourself is saying about you? Because if you're using that type of language, then it is going to be self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say, I am a failure, and that's what you're focusing on through your non-verbalized communication and the conversations you're having with yourself, so to speak, you are going to do things that are going to cause you to fail. If you call yourself a loser, you're going to look for elements in your life that prove to yourself that you are, in fact, a loser. Several weeks ago, I had a good friend of mine, Brett Bartholomew, on the podcast, and he does a lot of leadership coaching, and part of that is communication, obviously. And he does an interesting exercise with his clients and the people that he's teaching, including those on his team. He has people write down their negative thoughts about themselves. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I'm no good. I don't deserve this. I'm an a-hole, et cetera, et cetera. Has them write that down. Then he pairs those people up with a partner and he sits them at a table face to face. And he says, now I want you to take that language that you speak to yourself about, and I want you to vocalize that and direct that at another person. And it's no surprise that most people have an extremely difficult time doing that. Oh man, I would never say this to somebody else. I would never treat somebody else that way. I don't want them to feel bad. And yet we're so willing to do it to ourselves. Now, I believe that we should be our harshest critic. I believe that we should be holding ourselves to a high standard, but that's different than using language and thoughts and ideas that continually beat you down to the point where you begin to fulfill some of the things that you say about yourself. Instead of doing that, what I would suggest is that you're not a loser. Maybe you've lost. Maybe you've failed. I certainly have. Does that qualify us as this eternal, perpetual loser? No, it means we lost. And instead of having attitude about that, let's replace that with, hey, I lost. What can I learn from this? What can I change? And how can I be better in my life? Or rather than focusing so heavily on the negativity and what we didn't do and what we didn't accomplish and how we failed, focus on the things that we have done well. The places in life where we do succeed, where we do thrive, where we are capable and proficient, and then translate that into areas that we may need some shoring up. But guys, it is crucial that we learn to vocalize our thoughts in a constructive, healthy way, positive, encouraging, uplifting way. And I'm not saying we have to walk around pretending that everything is fine. You can have issues, you can have problems, you can have even disagreements, but we do need to work on doing this with a level of respect towards other people and a level of respect towards ourselves. So let's talk about 5 key points that I've been using personally that have helped me clean up my language a little bit. Is number 1 is I think it's very important that we know what our intent is with our language. Not very many people think about this. They just blurt out whatever comes to mind, regardless of how somebody else might interpret it, regardless of how it might make them look. And it lacks intentionality. But do you know what your intent is in sharing a message? I know what my intent is here. It's to articulate points and concepts and theories and ideas and practices that are going to serve you and help you become a better man. So what kind of language do I need to use in order to accomplish that task? Now, another thing you might consider is your audience. If I'm talking with construction workers or military men, I might talk differently than I would talk with white collar workers or medical professionals or children. But the intent is where we start. What is my intent? What do I want to convey? What do I want to communicate? What do I want to share? What do I want people to walk away with? And then once we know what our intent is, we can work backwards into the type of language that we can use. Not just whether or not we swear, but what stories should we share with a construction worker versus what anecdote might I share with a medical professional? They're going to be different. But the first point is to always know your intent. And I would also say knowing your audience. Number 2 is think about the information that you consume. I've had guys on the podcast, and there's some guys that I really admire, that I really respect, that have a lot of valuable information to share, and yet they drop the F-bomb in every other word. Now, I'm not one of these guys who's overly sensitive where I might call that guy out in public or never listen to a person's message, but I can't help but think how much more powerful their language would be, their message would be, if they were a little bit more intentional about swearing or about F-bombs. Now, look, again, it's their prerogative. And if they believe that that helps them and they're intentional about it, then all the power to them. But I think using swear words over and over again, the same one word or a verb, a noun, all the adjective, and it's the one word, like, really, that's the depth, that's the range of your vocabulary, and how distracting is it from your actual message? But it is very important in what we consume, because what we consume is going to begin to manifest itself in our lives. I remember years ago, I was in my financial services planning practice, just getting off the ground, and Ed Mylett was an early mentor of mine. And I would take his CDs, yes, CDs at the time. And in between appointments, as I was driving to and from different appointments, I would put his sales CD in, and I would get motivated and hyped up and inspired. And I remember one day I was having a conversation with my wife, and she stopped me and she said, "You sound so much like Ed Mylett right now." Of course I do, because that's the information that I was consuming. So you better be careful of what's going into your brain, because you are going to start parroting that information that you consume. Garbage in, garbage out. Good information in, good information out. It's just the way it works. It's like a recipe. If you put crappy food into the ingredients, the final result is probably not going to be delicious. But if you use the best ingredients, the best quality, in the right quantity, and you do that in the right order, you're going to have a delicious meal in front of you. It's the same thing with your language. If you're listening to music that's derogatory towards women, that glorifies violence and degeneracy, is it any wonder that we start to navigate towards these own behaviors in our lives? If, on the other hand, you're listening to music that is inspiring, that is motivating, that is positive and encouraging and uplifting, you're watching shows that have a good, wholesome message behind, that encourages and fosters virtue and honor, then these are the kind of things that we're going to start navigating towards. So be very, very careful about what goes in the 6 inches between our ears, because I'm telling you what you consume eventually becomes what you think about, and what you think about eventually becomes what you do and what you play out in life. Number 3, this one has been a challenge for me. I have to slow down. Even now, you might be listening to this and thinking, oh my goodness, Ryan's talking so fast. And I am going to be working on slowing down my tempo, my pace, because it gives us time to think about what words we should use. If I'm rattling 100 words per minute, not only am I stumbling over my words, but I might just be tempted to use language that's a default, that's not as intelligent as different language that I could be using. So slow down. This is what I'm working on. Pace yourself. Think about what's being said. Be more deliberate, be more intentional, be more clear about what you're saying, what it's communicating. And by the way, that's a great thing about slowing down, is when you slow down, it gives yourself time to evaluate how people are responding. Now, most of the time it's going to be nonverbal, but if you're just rattling all the words off as fast as you possibly can, there's no time to process the response from others. But if you slow down the tempo, you slow down the pace, you think about the words you're using, you're very intentional about what you're saying, you can then begin to see this person is resonating with this through their body language or even through their vocalized comments. You can see what they're not resonating with. You can see when they're engaged. You can see when they're disengaged. Jordan Peterson says, be precise with your language. He is. Think about his range of vocabulary and think about how much his message spreads. Now, sometimes it gets a little rambling. It gets a little long. You can almost hear him thinking as he's talking, but he is precise with his language. And if he messes up, he says, no, that's not the right phrase or not the right word. Here's a better word for it. And that's something I think most of us should strive to do better with. Slow down, guys. Take a breath. Again, this is what I'm working on. And let's be intentional about what we're using. Number 4, inventory. All right, inventory. If you're doing a presentation or a speech or standing up in front of your employees and communicating a message, or doing a podcast like this, or recording a video, I think it's a pretty good exercise to go back and to listen to your words with a critical ear. Objectively, listen, is the words I'm using conveying the message that I want? And if it isn't, that's okay, but we need to inventory the language so that we can make better choices moving forward. I do that on the podcast all the time. People make fun of me. You listen to your own podcast? Yes, I do listen, because I'm listening for the language I'm using. I'm listening for questions I'm asking. I'm listening for questions that I may have missed, or routes and avenues and veins of the conversation I should have explored. I'm listening with a critical ear. But I'm also very aware of what I tell myself. I've talked quite a bit about journaling lately. And one journal entry, because a lot of people like prompts, is what was your attitude today? What was the language that you said about yourself? How did you describe yourself to yourself? Did you encourage and bolster and foster growth and expansion and positivity for yourself? Or did you demean and demoralize and diminish who you are as a person? Write that stuff down. The more we can get intentional and clear about it, the more precise our language can be, and we can be deliberate about whether or not we're being positive or negative in our lives, and of course, the results that come from it. And guys, the last one here that I have for you is to expand your vocabulary, right? If you're dropping the F-bomb every other word, I'm not going to say you're not intelligent, but you're not showing your intelligence. You know, my 6-year-old, his vocabulary is significantly less than my vocabulary. And that's okay, because he's 6. But if you're 40 years old and you have to interject 2 or 3 swear words over and over again, every other word, it's so distracting. It diminishes what you're trying to do, and it makes us look kind of foolish. But imagine, on the other hand, if you had a precise word for every experience that you had, or every feeling that you were experiencing at the time, and you expanded your vocabulary. That's why guys like Jordan Peterson are so compelling, because of their vocabulary. Andrew Huberman, another one, obviously well-researched, obviously very intelligent, and he communicates that. He conveys that as he's sharing his message. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh. Now, these are guys that maybe you agree with or disagree with, but I don't think that we can disagree that they have a wide range of vocal tools at their disposal that they've cultivated over time in order to convey their message, whether you agree with it or not. So guys, let's expand our vocabulary. And how do you do that? Well, like I said earlier, you have to think about the information that you're consuming. What books are you reading? That's going to expand your vocabulary. What music are you listening to? What podcasts are you consuming? What YouTube videos are you watching? Because that is going to be how you show up. So expand your vocabulary by being deliberate and intentional about the words and information that's going into our brain. Guys, I realize as I'm talking about this that it may not seem like a big deal. And I believe the reason we may not think it's a big deal is because this is something that we do every day and we don't pay a whole lot of attention to. But I'm telling you what, if we can pay attention to the way that we communicate with ourselves and with others, we are going to build so much more credibility, which is going to drive so many more people into positive action that's going to improve their lives. Imagine a father yelling at his children, cursing, swear words, negativity, hostility, demeaning language. Now imagine, on the other hand, a father who is engaged, intentional about the words he's using, has a large vocabulary to draw from, is using positive, encouraging, uplifting words. How is that going to rub off on a child? Well, we know the answer. We 100% know the answer. And yet we tend to, as men, overlook it because A, we don't care, or B, we might think it's unimportant. It's not. It's crucial. So I'm going to challenge you and encourage you to join me in our quest, if you will, to eliminate some of the swearing, to think about the negativity in our words, even the tempo and the speed and the pace and the way in which we deliver our message, and be more intentional about that, be more positive about that, expand our vocabularies, and really work on using language as a tool. And guys, it is a tool. It's all it is. It's a tool. And words are powerful. They can hurt people. They can uplift people. We know they're powerful, so let's use them correctly. In fact, I'll say this is a lot like style. I've got a friend, Tanner Guzzi, he's been on the podcast several times. And it's amazing to me how many men are either ignorant to or unwilling to consider that maybe they ought to improve their style, because men don't worry about that. Well, look, your style is a tool, and you could ignore it and you can go with the status quo. But I'm telling you what, the guy that cares about his appearance and continually works to improve it has another tool that's going to help him build influence, credibility, and authority, the same as our words. So guys, I hope that helps. Let me know what you think about the podcast. Drop it in the comments below if you're on YouTube, which you can check out at Order of Man if you're not watching, or wherever you're listening. Please, if you would, leave me a rating and review. Connect with me on Instagram at Ryan Michler. Take a screenshot, share this with somebody who needs to hear it. And then also want to let you know, in about a week and a half, we're opening up our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. This has been going for about 7 years. We're opening up for the first time since December. So if you're interested, head to orderofman.com/Iron Council. You can watch a video, learn more about what we do inside of the brotherhood, the Iron Council, and get signed up to be notified when we open it up March 15th. All right, guys, that's what I've got for you today. Go out there, take action, use words to your benefit, become the man you are meant to be.